Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us this morning. So I hope you find this topic super interesting. I do. From lab to market, how to turn scientific insights into business reality. We have three perfect speakers to discuss this important topic. I'm going to skip reading very long bios if I wanted to of the speakers. But instead of the introduction, I would like to ask each of the speakers to give a little bit of the journey that they have taken up to this point as student turning to entrepreneur, in the case of Jonathan, and also the academic career achievers that we have here in this room today. So let's start off with Jonathan. Jonathan's journey is very relevant and important to discuss today's topic. Jonathan, I will let you tell the audience as to why I'm saying this. Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. A few years ago, I was a PhD student at MIT studying, AI and deep learning, which obviously now have become very popular topics, but at that time were still a little bit niche. I wrote a paper that became very popular on ways of training deep neural networks efficiently. And some people reached out to me. They just emailed me and said, "Hey, want to start a company based on this paper?" And thankfully, I said yes. They became my co-founders. We started a company called Mosaic ML. And the company was quite successful. 3 years later, we were acquired by a much bigger company called Databricks for a little over $1 billion. And now I run all of AI research at Databricks. It was an incredible journey and not one that I planned on having. I was supposed to become a professor at Harvard. But I'm really happy that this is the journey that I went on. And I think a lot these days about how to share this journey with other academics.
Thank you. So it's a very exciting story, right? So, he was a PhD student. Next thing he knows, he's running a company. He has founded a company that was already unicorn just in a very short period of time, which was acquired by, I believe, the second largest AI company in the private space after OpenAI, Databricks. So he's now part of the Databricks company, but he is running the AI operations for Databricks. So we will definitely go back to Jonathan later on for more questions. But let's start off on the academic side. Soumya Sensei, can you just talk a little bit about your journey and where you are and where you're heading?
Okay, so good morning. First of all, it is my honor to be here, and thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful session. So as I understand, today's topics is how we can create the robust innovation ecosystem. But I just want to say that this is not homework only for the university. But today I want to discuss how important we can create the better ecosystem where the university, industry, and the government work together. Because currently I'm working for the University of Tokyo as Vice President and General Director of the University Corporate Relations. And how here my experience tells us how important to create the better working environment to closely to create the work together among the university, industry, and government.
Thank you. So Nemoto Sensei, would you please share your journey as well?
Okay, I have seen the development of quantum technologies for the last 30 years almost. And I have seen, that the beginning is, a little bit strange academic studying, doing quantum technologies. But now I think a lot of attention gathers to the field. And there are many aspects because the quantum technology is interesting in a way that's sort of having hardware development and software development and something different as well. So that if you're thinking about technology dependent on the field you are in, I think the journey will be different. That's another aspect. So I think that's quite a sort of good topic to think about how we can do better tech transfer. Thank you.
Thank you. So my first question would be, because we're discussing the role of academic institutions and universities in terms of how we want to promote our startup ecosystem and really transfer technology from campus to the business world. One important element here is the role of teachers, professors, faculty. Where does it fit in terms of promoting that ecosystem? Just being a sort of knowledge transfer person to pure teacher to more of a coach, guide, that is something that needs to take place on campus. Do you think that's happening, Somya-sensei, in terms of the role of faculty, the role of professors?
Yes, this is a very important point, and the role of a university professor is changing. So they used to be just a teacher, but additional function is a mentor, and to create the startup or also collaborate with the existing large companies. So indeed, the university may have two role to foster the innovation. So one is the partnership with the existing industry, and another thing is the creation of a startup. And to make the new startup, the education is very important. And also to work with the existing industry, maybe collaboration is critical. So I want to discuss those two important roles separately. Thank you.
But both of you are, professors. Do you see your role as professor changing as OIST and other universities are really trying to promote this ecosystem of startups?
Well, university still has the traditional view of education, then that's important, I think. But at the same time, we have a different type of education, particularly it's some emerging technologies. We see the gap between the education possible in university and the education we need for the implementation of these emerging technologies. So probably startups also should think about education. Then to make ecosystem, we need to work together. So that's what I feel.
Jonathan, I wanted to come to you again. When you were a PhD student writing your papers, what did you think of your relationship with professors and advisors that you're working with? How was it impacting you in terms of your choice that you have made in terms of setting up a company instead of going? You said you were thinking about teaching at Harvard later on, which may happen still later on in your life. Can you just tell us a little bit about what was happening in terms of your relationship and probably guidance or mentorship that you're receiving at MIT?
Yeah, I think it was very traditional. My advisor was there to teach me how to be a scientist and supervise my papers and help me do research and help me learn. My knowledge of industry came from spending time in industry. I did internships every single summer at different companies to learn about what kinds of problems companies were worried about. And that was incredibly valuable for just making sure my research was relevant because that was something I cared about. I interacted a little bit with VC firms that were around MIT, but not too much. But I really thought of these as kind of two different sources of information. I was just grateful that they were both available to me kind of in the same context. I even worked part-time at companies during the school year while I was also working on my research and kind of got both exposures at the same time, which was very valuable.
Thank you. So do you think that more traditional sort of role as professors, focusing more on the, educational side of things, in your opinion, is it something that should be changing or that should not change? Any thoughts around the role of professors and teaching staff?
I think it would be nice if professors also knew about entrepreneurship and knew about, building companies and knew about venture capital. But it would also be nice if professors, could juggle and professors could dance and professors could sing and lots of other things. And we ask a lot from a professor. We already ask them to teach and fundraise and manage a business and manage a lab and manage a scientific agenda and mentor students. That's already far too many responsibilities and too many expectations for a professor. I don't even think teaching and research should necessarily be in the same person because those are very different skills. So the idea of then asking professors to also, understand industry and work on entrepreneurship, those are challenging expectations. I think the way I would think about it is we should hire professors who do have that experience, not exclusively, but that's experience that we should find valuable and we should encourage as kind of more academic activity. It should be service, or it should be, teaching in the form of, doing entrepreneurship. But we should really focus on giving lots of exposure to students to industry through many other channels, having people from industry visit, giving them internships, getting them exposure to VC firms, getting them funding from VC firms, giving them that experience and giving them the ability to choose to pursue that path if they want to. But asking professors to do that is that's a lot.
That's a lot. Do you have professors at your universities who can teach, dance, and sing at the same time?
Maybe not.
Can you teach and dance and sing and I don't know what else, but
I like singing, but I'm not a singing teacher. But the Jonathan raised very important point, and as Nemoto Sensei mentioned, still university it is critically important to keep the traditional education, but simultaneously we need to provide the entrepreneurial education. So sometimes the same person can teach both the traditional education and also entrepreneurial education. However, it is quite rare. So this means, we need to invite the more industry people to come to the campus and then teach the students and provide more opportunity to interact with the industry people. So this may be the key to create the innovation ecosystem.
The challenge, though, if you look at universities in general, the structure is set up in a way that would promote professors based on academic achievement. I mean, there have been some exceptions, but in general, if you look at the majority of universities in Japan, very few cases where practitioners, business people, would come in and start, well, they can teach, but in terms of promotion and tenure track at university level, it doesn't happen that easily. So do you have any sense at all in terms of, how that's changing or not changing, the promotion and, I guess the review, the performance review that takes place in terms of how professors are seen by universities, is that changing at all?
I want to say what Murakami-san is talking is 5 years ago. So now university starts changing. So indeed, the University of Tokyo may have a lot of program where the industry and the university work together, providing the co-teaching and exercise and providing more opportunity, internship and global internship for the younger people. I want to say the university in Japan started changing.
Nemoto-san, is it really changed? What I just described, is it just 5 years ago and it's now a very different world that we're in?
Well, it is changing, but as you know, Japan is not good at changing. So I think, there are some changes, the efforts to accommodate these new type of educational systems, but in reality, it's sort of, it's a little bit segregated in a sense. Just the old people, old style is still there. And also that is good, but then, it's a real diversity effect. We need to, more movement. People need to move one sector to another, and we need more collaboration or communications. So that if we add that on top of that, that would be good. Another change I would say is we started talking about, maybe evaluation need to be changed, not only looking at the number of papers and citation and things like that. How about someone develop the system which use many people? So how do we evaluate it? It's research in academia also has started to change.
Yeah, so that's so diversified sort of a community, I think, at the academic level. I think that's something that we would like to see more of in Japan. I just would like to go back to Jonathan. I wanted to ask you, what you thought of the student body. I mean, when you were a student, right? So we just talked a little bit about professors and teaching staff. Your fellow PhD students or maybe other students that you were studying with. I see a lot of momentum at American universities, MIT included, in terms of students getting more interested in startups, right? So I'm wondering whether you are seeing a sort of a new trend in terms of what kind of students are getting into AI research. Are they really thinking in terms of, okay, I want to be a founder of basically, companies like Mosaic, right? The company that you founded. And you're, in a few years, you're acquired by Databricks for $1 billion. Is there a mindset change among the students, among the PhD students that you studied with? Are there different type of students that you're starting to see on American university campuses?
I don't think so, and I think that's a problem. And I think there's more we can do. So the answer to your question is complicated. Keep in mind, students only know what they've seen. And a student who's starting a PhD has seen very little. Maybe they did an undergraduate degree. Maybe they did a master's degree. Maybe they worked for 1 or 2 years. That's a very short amount of time. And they had to have been very lucky to be exposed to entrepreneurship or startups. We certainly, we hear the news. We see the companies that get acquired for $1 billion. We don't hear about the companies that completely failed. So, we struggle with that. I don't think we communicate that very well. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that, if you're a PhD student, you've already taken a big risk. You've already bet your career on 5 minutes or on 5 years of your life. And now you're going to go and take another risk for 5 more years. It's a big risk and we need to provide some safety. So we have to, so I think it's tricky. And then the last thing to keep in mind is, what about all the people who decide not to do a PhD at all? Because opportunities are so good, they can go straight into doing this. Why do you need the PhD? And on the flip side, all the people who do a PhD, and then they get offered a job at Google. And Google offers to pay them very well, a very safe salary. What would you do?
Good question. Nemoto-san, I'd like to come back to you on that question. Yeah, students, what are they thinking? Are they thinking, okay, I want to go for a very safe, career path? Or are they really thinking, like, take a lot of risks and found a company, but they don't hear much about failures. They hear about only success stories. Is there something that's changing among the students that you work with in terms of their mindset?
I think I can see a little bit changes, but in Japan particularly, we don't have a safe net. I think definitely need it, because once you fail, you don't have the track, and we are very age society, so it's up age 30, you have to achieve something, and so on. So if you delay by 5 years, for example, that's already a lot of could be negative factors in the life. So in that sense, well, even in the US, he thinks that the way, then definitely we need much more safe net. So we can try, but try and error should be allowed to do. And during PhD, maybe we can sort of think about it. We have to graduate in 3 years. That's very, very tight. But we may be able to change that in a way they can try during your PhD. Then if they succeed, they may leave, or, doing some kind of startup research, then could lead to PhD as well. So there are a lot of different ways of doing education as well.
Thank you. I mean, Japan has a real problem in terms of attracting students to do PhDs. I mean, we're behind most of the OECD, countries when it comes to the literally sheer number of PhDs, especially in tech areas. So yeah, Some-sensei.
Yes. So I want to say the mindset of Japanese student start changing. And I could maybe 10% agree with you. The still Japanese students are conservative, but I can provide the thousands of evidence. So making startup is so popular career path for the student, at least at the University of Tokyo. And we are providing the more than 60 courses related to the entrepreneurial educational course. And all of them are so popular. And I myself is a researcher of semiconductor doing very fundamental research. But last year, 2 students take a 1-year leave, and this year 2 students take a 1-year leave. 4 of them took the 1-year leave just to get involved in the startup activities. And so that is getting more and more popular. The losing opportunity is detrimental for the young people, and they understand. So if we provide them more opportunity, and then they are willing to take that. And simultaneously, the student graduated from University of Tokyo used to go to the a government or a big company. It's still popular, but the number of students going to the government is getting less and less, as the newspaper said. So simultaneously, the startup is getting more and more popular.
May I share one quick thought on this?
Yes.
I don't think it's that Japanese students are conservative. I think it's that all PhD students are conservative. Because doing a startup is a bad decision. It's a decision where you're likely to fail. It's likely not to be worth it. The people who win when you do a startup are the venture capitalists, because they can invest in a portfolio. And that portfolio means that in the end they will win. But even the venture model requires VCs to encourage every startup founder to take as much risk as possible, despite the fact that that's often quite bad for the individual founders, but very good for the VC and their portfolio and their returns. So I think any student who's rational should be very careful about doing a startup. I don't know if doing a startup is a good idea. So we need to find ways to incentivize doing that. That can come in many forms. What I've found, at least in the US, is that we love founders who fail, because that experience, that life experience is very valuable. And so we love to hire them and pay them a lot of money because they've seen something that nobody else has seen. But there is no safety net, and there's a huge opportunity cost. If you didn't take that job at Google that paid you a lot of money and instead did a startup and failed, and now you're 5 years older and don't really have much income and haven't really started your life. So I wouldn't think about this as a Japan phenomenon. This is simply that even just from any rational actor, no matter where they are, it's not a good idea to start a company as an individual. And we need to find ways to make it a better idea to start a company.
Life is hard. Well, I just wanted to follow up on that, Jonathan. So you mentioned earlier, okay, it's you want to hear as many failures as success stories, and that's not something that you might be able to do easily. But in terms of what universities should do, can do, just address the challenge that you mentioned. It's a very close society, close community. There are things that universities should do, like internship. You mentioned earlier, maybe connectivity with other communities such as VC communities and startup communities. So maybe you can just mention a little bit about what you suggest, what you recommend to dean of MIT or university leadership in terms of what they should be thinking, what they should be changing to promote more of entrepreneurship among the student body?
Yeah, I think there are 3 things. The first is we need to bring the industry to the students and make sure the students are aware of the possibilities that are out there. That means, internships, but that means speakers coming to campus. That means, bring in someone like me to give an academic talk where I can talk about both, my academic research because I understand that audience and that's the world I come from, but also I can talk about what that meant in industry and what kinds of things we're looking for in industry. Bringing in those leaders to talk about what matters is very important, giving students that exposure. The second part is getting students into industry. I think that PhDs should have a requirement that students do internships. And that means universities will be required to find students exciting enough internships that it's worth it for them. We should push students out there. The third part is changing the faculty over time to have more exposure to this. Again, you can't expect a faculty member to do everything, but you can have some faculty members where this is a part of their specialty. You can promote on this. So I kind of ask, the other 2 panelists, would you hire someone like me with tenure? Would you consider my startup experience and the work that I've done and the body of research that I've developed over the past many years to be the equivalent of a tenure case? Even though I wasn't publishing papers, I was building companies and solving problems and building open source libraries and writing blog posts. Is that enough research experience to get tenure? And if so, can someone who comes in as a junior professor do projects and have impact in that way, or start a company and have that earn them tenure? If the answer is no, then I don't think universities are going to change. If the answer is yes, then I think there's hope that we can kind of create this more diverse environment where students get exposure to lots of different perspectives.
Love to hear your reactions, maybe Nemoto Sensei, to Jonathan's comments.
I think that basically the answer is yes, but that's also dependent on your plan. After you come to university, what do you want to do in university? So I think it's not the track record. You have enough track record. It doesn't matter in the industry or the university, academia, but then you change your place of your activities to university, then what I'm going to do? That's, I think, the most important question.
Sume Sensei?
Okay, so again, the university tried to keep the traditional research and education opportunity practically unchanged. However, we need the more homework to contribute to the innovation. So where the professors are not usually good at talking about the industry, for that reason, we expect more people may come to the campus and interact with the young people. Simultaneously, as Jonathan mentioned, the internship is very, very powerful tool to expose the young people for the outside to get the experiences. Well, coming back to your question, and I truly hope the university is getting more and more open and to attract the more people from industry.
So we were discussing earlier, as we focus more on the commercialization phase of research, and including professors and students, is the risk of underestimating the importance of fundamental research, basic research, and we want to make sure that there's a healthy balance. Japan as a country has been really focusing on the startup ecosystem, including universities, right? So, maybe Nemoto Sensei, would you like to share your thought around, how we can strike a right balance?
Yes, I think this is very important because, it's like if you're only looking at how we implement technology, emerging technology into the society, then we are almost looking at only the harvest time. So we need to actually grow that sort of, to that point, then that takes time. We started maybe 50 years ago, to quantum technology coming a very, very long time. And that length is necessary for research. So the fundamental research is, in the sense, if we don't have this, we don't have any new next technology coming up. So that's important. And also in quantum, I think now it's a lot of money coming in and there's lots of attention coming in, but the leaders in the world in this field started to warn, too much emphasis on the commercialization of the current technology of the quantum is hurt the development of quantum technology itself. So we have to have a good balance in the field.
Thank you. Just to go a little bit deeper in terms of what universities should do, can do, and just following up on the suggestion that Jonathan made, how does a university go around in terms of actually building effective partnerships with other stakeholders? This building, ecosystem that has a lot of different elements outside the typical academic environment. It's easy to say, you should invite, it's easy to invite maybe speakers who are venture capitalists or startups, founders. But if it stops there, I'm not sure how far, how much impact that can have. So what are the actual things that universities can do to include other communities in their efforts to promote entrepreneurship? Do you have any suggestions as to what universities can do in a very practical sense. Jonathan, do you have any suggestions on that front?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about the money. Everything revolves around money. Who has money and what do they need in exchange for it? The venture capitalists I work with beg me every day, can you please introduce me to PhD students? I want to get access to them so that I can convince them to start a company and fund them. Companies are looking to hire students and they have money and students want jobs. So in some sense, the incentives are already there for all of these different entities to get involved in university life. I think the challenges are, number one, are universities kind of welcoming and open-minded to allowing this to happen? And number two, how do universities do this without allowing these organizations to take over the university and simply make the university all about a recruiting funnel for startups or a recruiting funnel for companies? So I think really the experience I had at MIT was, it's about opening the door. And opening the door maybe a little wider than we traditionally open it today. The money is there and the incentive is there and the desire is there. I think there's a risk in opening it too far. I think Stanford in some sense is, it's a successful university and that lots of companies come out of it. But from a research perspective, it's a place that I think has opened the door too far and has maybe lost some of its sense of what it means to be a university doing fundamental research, which is still a very important purpose in society. MIT, I think, had the door a little bit too closed. And so there are lots of different models for this, and I think we need to experiment over time. But, when I hear you mention worry about universities losing focus on fundamental research, my reaction is, I think we're doing a great job on fundamental research. I think, that is a phenomenal place where universities around the world, especially in Japan, are excellent. And so opening the door a little wider and sacrificing a little bit of fundamental research for the sake of kind of making the students available for, companies to try to throw money at, that wouldn't be a bad thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity and not a lot of sacrifice.
All right. Money. All right. So is the door too open, too closed, or completely closed at Todai?
Well, I think the University of Tokyo may have a lot of program to work with the industry, like sponsored chair or sponsored laboratory. So in the past 7 years, the School of Engineering succeeded in raising the contribution from industry by factor of 10 and making the 60 new research group and hiring new young faculties. So the School of Engineering may have 350 PI. So that means 60 new hiring new young people is really, really great impact. So the working with industry is really great. But of course, there exists some criticism. So are you working for the money? So that is not true. So we closely work with the industry to contribute the innovation. And important thing is to select the good company to work with the academia. At that point, so university is willing to open all the resources and to work together.
So you're saying the door is completely open, there's enough money?
Well, money is always important to promote, to accelerate the research. But important thing is how we can spend the money. And the objective of the money, the objective of that research project. So if university can open the resources to solve the important social problem, so that is quite admirable thing. And for that purpose, we want to open resources and to attract the more money.
Okay. So what about OIST? What's your thinking in terms of the funding strategies at OIST?
I want to challenge just a moment. I think when I talk about money, I mean much more than just funded research. And I think funded research is in some sense one of the least productive uses of that money. It's honestly throwing the money at the individuals. That student could be at the university, or they could be working at the company. That student could get venture money and leave. So I think it's like, I want to just push as we have this discussion to be broader. It's not just about funded research. In some sense, that's the most boring part. It's about getting money to the individuals and incentivizing them.
By the way, just maybe elaborate on that point. Were you getting funded as you were finishing up your PhD research?
Yeah, IBM funded my research based on a grant that I wrote to them because they liked the work I was doing. But I was also working part-time at Google and then part-time at Facebook, getting paid on the side to come and work with them and do fun projects. And then, we received our first round of startup funding, while I was still 6 months away from graduating. So I was getting personally compensated in various ways that incentivized me and changed my focus. And I did internships every single summer. So funded research is great, but money in my pocket changes my behavior in very different ways. And that's not a bad thing. MIT had a lot of stress about this, by the way. They were very nervous about the idea of students getting money directly from companies and what that might do to corrupt academia.
Corrupt academia. That's just so funny. So was it very, in your case, was it very unusual, or were there other students who were in the same situation as you were in terms of getting funded by various companies while they're doing PhD, while they're still enrolled as students?
It was typical for their PhDs to be funded by companies through funded research. But, as a student, you kind of don't care where your funding comes from. You focus on doing work. It was somewhat unusual at that time for students to receive money directly from companies and work part-time at companies. Now, in AI, at least, it's somewhat standard for the top students, but it's still something that is a little bit unsanctioned, at least in the US, and kind of happens behind the scenes. And some universities are okay with it. Some universities aren't. Some universities turn a blind eye. Some try to stamp it out, but can't really do anything about it. MIT had big faculty meetings about whether to allow Google to fund students directly in various ways. It was highly controversial. And I think it's still controversial because if someone's getting paid by a company to do some work while they're also at their PhD, their attention is going to be divided. Their loyalty is going to be divided. Are they really focused on fundamental research? PhD students are paid very badly in the United States. I was paid about $30,000 a year, whereas companies were paying me as if I was being paid more like $100,000 a year for whatever time I was spending. So it was it is something that can corrupt if not managed very carefully. But it also changed my behavior and made me think a lot about industry and think a lot about the problems in industry because I was getting paid very well. And as a PhD student, money was tight. And they also gave me free food, which was nice.
Free food, that's important. Hamilton, do you have any comments on that topic? Is it happening always in terms of PhD students getting private sector funding on the research or projects that they're working on? Is it something that happens or not?
Well, that's in quantum domain. There are some universities allowing a student to have the position in university, getting a job, and sort of sharing that sort of financial cost between university and companies. That's also true. And always students are funded, but of course, that's possibilities there. I think we need to talk about it openly. That's first step, I think, in any universities. Jonathan put it's all about money, but I think, that's, we could say in the other way around. So I think, people are everything in a sense. So the fundamental limitation was coming from human resource rather than money. But I think, that is, of course, two different sides of the one problem or one issue. So that's really hard. But from a university point of view, that's everything is human resource issue more important because people will do innovation, not money. So, of course, these are together. But in that sense, I think, we probably can think about a little bit different type of education and thinking about a more ecosystem. So the startup coming to education side, we are going out a little bit more sort of business side, but they also can come into the education side so we can work together in a bit better way. That might be possible.
Thank you. Sumi-sensei, I just wanted to ask you to comment on Jonathan's proposal in terms of how the funding could be changing.
So Jonathan raised a very important point, but the going to the international internship is not so common in Japan, and thereby I'm encouraging my student to go abroad as an internship, and in such a case, the Microsoft, Google, Apple gave my student really really high salary, and that may affect the changing their mindset. That is very true.
Okay, thank you. But I think in Japan it's still very unusual, right? That in terms of PhD students getting funded by private companies in terms of their research or projects that they're working on. But do you think that can change? Is it possible for Tokyo PhD students to start receiving money, funding from private sector companies?
Currently the number of students who gets the money from the private sector is quite limited. Thereby, the impact is still limited. But I think overall, it's a good thing to interact with the industry. So, but if that is quite a majority, and then as Jonathan mentioned, that may induce the tension between industry and academia and cause the different problem.
Okay, thank you. We have actually a couple more minutes before we start taking questions from the audience. But my last question for you is if you can please share with us the most exciting development you're seeing in your respective areas. Semiconductor is not the semiconductor industry we used to think of 10 years ago. It's a lot happening. Sumiya-san, would you like to start with your industry?
Yes. So as Murakami-san mentioned, the semiconductor is getting so important, and that is completely different from the situation 10 years ago. And also deep tech and entrepreneurial educational course are so popular. The combination of, government strategic focus and also, innovation may get together and creating the better opportunity for the Japan in the future. That's I believe.
Nemoto Sensei, your area is hot right now. I mean, we see a lot of startups that are just emerging in your research area. So can you just tell us what is the latest? What's the most exciting thing that you think is happening?
Okay, that's a bit difficult question because, lots of attention come into quantum computation, quantum computers. But the quantum computers, to work as a computer, we need a bit more time. It's much longer time we need to develop something. It works without errors. So it's not something we cannot come up with in a few years. On the other hand, the quantum technologies, it's a sensing, communications, crypto, a lot of different fields. We are going into quantum. And also that the complexity we can generate in the quantum is enormous. So, for example, if you have with a qubit, is bit becomes quantum and it becomes qubit, and the 50 qubits, then that sort of representational space we have is, if we only compare the number to number, is almost as big as human brain network. So that means, that we have this enormous amount of complexity. Then we didn't really think 10 qubits can actually contribute to recognize images, or 3 photons could do something similar. So there are lots of new types of technologies you probably haven't reached to the business side yet, but the new types of technologies from computation, sensing, communication coming out now, and these are very exciting fields at the moment, I think.
Thank you, Jonathan. Obviously, there's so much excitement in the AI field based on what we saw with the Nobel Prize winners list. So if you don't mind sharing your thought around the most interesting, exciting development that you see in your area with the audience, that would be great.
Yeah, I think everybody is so focused on AI getting better in terms of quality and in terms of intelligence. I actually think the more exciting part is AI getting cheaper and faster. So let me give you a metaphor. If you imagine the internet in 1995, the internet in 1995 is no different than the internet today in terms of to a first approximation, the protocols, the technologies. The difference is that it's far cheaper, far faster, and far higher bandwidth, and far more available than it was in 1995. And that's the difference between a slow dial-up connection and being able to, download video. TikTok made no sense in 1995 for many reasons, cultural and also, just technologically, it made no sense. And today it's incredibly cheap to run an application like that. AI is getting cheaper and faster in the same way. And I think we'll see entirely new applications of AI and entirely new products just based on the fact that cost is going down.
Great, thank you. We will take a few questions. I think we may have online questions, one or two first. So if you don't mind just starting off with the online question.
We have 2 online questions. First question is, will quantum computing have civil and commercial applications, or will it be mainly used for strategic and defense purposes?
Well, I think the quantum computers will have lots of different type of applications, and mostly in not military purposes. But at the moment, quantum computers do not work properly. That means, if your computer using, say, you go back home and using computer, and there's so much errors, then you have to correct that errors before you use the answer. Then you wouldn't think that's a computer, right? So in that sense, quantum computer is not a computer yet. So that's why, the application is very much limited. But once the quantum computer works, we develop different type of applications, and then it should work for many, many different things. And we started to see that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just the other question, please?
Second question is, how do universities that are trying to change and be more innovative not avoid the reality that international university rankings have quite rigid criteria, and that for individual researchers, it is the peer review model of academic research that drives their success? There seems to be a disconnect between institutional ambitions and the incentives that drive the careers of individual researchers.
Maybe Somya-sensei, do you have an answer to that question?
Okay, so this is really big question, and that I cannot give answer for a short 1 minute. But I want to say in the end, balance is quite important to make the synergetic effect between the traditional research and also new research to contribute the innovation. And then we need to respect the both values and to admire the standpoint of those two different research. So this might be the important.
So I'd like to take a few questions from the room. Maybe would you like to start? If you can, I'll take 2 or 3. Oh, is that microphone?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, panelists, for these insightful contributions. I am Jorge Calvo. I am Deputy Dean of GLOBIS Business School. And as a colleague, I would like to understand why the percentage of highly cited papers in Japan remains flat for many years. So we dropped from 2000, we were in the top 4 rank. And last year we dropped to the 13th position in the world rank in percentage of highly cited papers. What do you think that's happening?
I'll take another question. Okay, maybe go ahead.
Hi, I'm a research scientist at Google Brain, Google DeepMind now, Shane Gu. It's actually great to see you, Johnson, here at this GLOBIS event. I'm actually one of the crafted PhDs, so I spent 3 years, my 4-year PhD working for Google Brain. And then when I was in Cambridge, I took a train to DeepMind in London, just to have sushi, and then do some research there. I really enjoy a lot of your comments, and then and I really wish you one who can dedicate the resources. My question to you is these days a lot of big name AI startups or top researcher engineers from OpenAI, DeepMind, top PhD labs. How do you differentiate which ones will succeed versus which one won't? Because there are definitely a lot of failures even for the big names.
And sorry, one more question I would just like to take. Is there a microphone?
Representative. I'm sorry. Yes, I have a question to Takao as a representative of the Japanese universities. Firstly, considering the aging society, the reduced number of students, what do you do in bringing in, creative minds from around the globe? The second would have been a comment, but I phrase it as a question. Why do you think the venture capital overall is only 3% of that what's available in the US? Venture capital in Japan is only 3% of the venture capital available in the United States. Why do you think that is?
Okay, thank you. We have a few questions. So let's just start off with the first one, which is maybe... Soumya Sensei, can you answer the first question, which is, what's happening, the number of papers, publications, and the universities in Japan are publishing, not
yes,
increasing?
so in my understanding, the globalization is quite important to increase the ranking of, university system. The globalization is a key, but still the teaching language in most Japanese university is still Japanese, and we fail to attract the talented overseas student to Japan. So the diversity and promoting diversity and globalization is a key to increase the, ranking. And also, coming to your question is also similar. The globalization and cooperation is quite important. So as you know, the government of Japan has very aggressive plan to increase the number of startups by factor of 10 to achieve their goal. So they try to raise the investment to 10 billion Japanese yen, but currently only 10 trillion Japanese yen, but currently 800 billion Japanese yen can be achieved. So why? So that's so low. The government failed to work with the private sector cooperatively, and if the they can align the better collaboration opportunity, and then investment could be increased and attracting more money outside from Japan. And aging society. So what was the question related?
That's okay. So we're going to go one by one.
Okay.
So let me just try the second one, which is probably for Jonathan. That's going to be a hard one to answer. But, for craft PhD students, I think you will like to answer to the extent you can. So which companies are likely to succeed, and how do you choose companies?
Well, if I knew how to do that, I'd be a lot richer right now. But there are two signs I look for that are likely to be failures. The first is companies that have no obvious potential product or way to make money. The other are companies that have raised too much money at too high of a valuation and have cornered themselves because there's no way they're going to live up to that valuation. With that in mind, those are the two signs I look for of likely failures. If you avoid those two traps, then you now have to just succeed as a normal business in the normal ways, and that's its own difficult thing to do. But for companies that go ahead and try to do, raise lots of money at a high valuation and feel like they have a lot of on-paper wealth, it's good for their egos and it's bad for their long-term success and for the success of their employees.
Okay, that was a good answer. You got it. So let me just try the last question. Nemoto Sensei, would you be able to share your thought around the aging society, and that's actually a very important factor to consider when you think about the role of universities, and maybe the VC question we can talk about a little bit separately.
Yeah, Japan is, I think, frontier of the aging society in the world. And still, the government is, in terms of innovation, government is putting a lot of emphasis in the younger generation and how we inspire them. But actually, we're not really looking at individuals. That's one problem, and diversity as well. So actually, if we have less and less children, that means older generation needs to work as well. Otherwise, we don't have enough workforce. So I think reskilling or recurrent education is a traditional way of doing it, but we need more to it. I think we all need to be up to today's technology, and all generation needs to join the innovation, and we have to keep the diversity. So that is only the way we can go forward, I think.
Thank you. The last one is really hard to answer, but why is there so little money, risk money in Japan relative to other countries? That's your question, right? And I guess we just frame it in a more university framework. Why do you think there is so little money going into university in terms of startup investment or funding available for startups that are coming out of universities?
I think in addition to the private sector, government should take the risk. For example, the most important customer for the startup in some industrial sector is the government, but the door is not open for the government government contract. So if the government takes a risk and make the more credit to the startup, and then more investment may come from the private sector.
Let's hope that will happen. I think we have maybe one or two more questions. Would you like to ask one more question over there, please?
Thank you. My name is Bradley Wargo. I'm from Houston, Texas, USA. And my question is kind of going to that safety net idea. Venture capitalists have a vast portfolio to offset their losses, but then they have that one unicorn. Similarly, are we seeing universities try to embrace that by having bets on different ideas? Because many innovations and research breakthroughs have happened by accident. Is that starting to be fostered, or do you see a path through there for continued growth in that segment?
Jonathan, were you able to hear that question?
Yeah. And my very quick response would be, well, yeah, that's the whole point of a university. Universities have departments, and then within departments, they have many different researchers working on many different things. And across the academic ecosystem, we have many different universities with different styles. And the idea is that most of the money that we put in from the government is going to be, in some sense, wasted, or at least is not going to lead to clear societal impact that pays for itself. But, that one researcher who works on that one silly project for a very long time will end up changing the world. And a lot of these ideas are too early for, private money to fund. That's why we have universities, and that's why we have government funding of universities.
Thank you. I think maybe just for one last question, I think it might be.
Yeah, it's a quick question and a comment. And the comment is money, 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 but the allocation of money needs to be changed. Example, ERC, the European Research Council, now allocates a substantial amount of money, almost 2 million euro, right, to individual researchers to do a project. But then that project, led by this researcher, goes out for competition amongst the different universities, so that you've got Munich University competing with Brussels University, competing with Vienna University to attract that researcher who's got the money. So, the Japanese university system is very ossified. It's a very, very narrow, if you're from Todai, you can't talk to the people from Kyodai. So what do you think about breaking up, and opening it up for competition? You fund individual researchers, but you let those researchers have the universities compete to attract those laboratories. Is that possible in Japan?
That's a wild idea. Is it possible in Japan?
Idea,
do you think it could happen in Japan?
I think the first government make the decision, but if the government provides such kind of opportunity, so I think any kind of change will welcome, and because we don't know the solution. So in that sense, your suggestion is really great, and I'm happy to see such kind of future change.
Do you think it's possible for Japan to do that too?
Well, at the moment, it's very difficult. I have to say it's only a few places could do, and probably OEC is one of them. But it is difficult because, Japanese society is very tightly binded, and it's like a mesh-like, and so it's very difficult to move around. So we need to open up that culture, and competitiveness needs to get in, I think.
I think we are completely over time. So thank you so much for the great panel discussion, Soumya Sensei, Enomoto Sensei, and Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us from New York. Again, let's give them a big hand. Thank you.